He was a friar. A prisoner, actually, locked in a stone cell in Toledo, Spain, in the year 1577, by members of his own religious order. The cell was barely large enough to lie down in. There was one small opening near the ceiling, too high to see through. He had nothing to write with. For months, he had nothing. And yet, in that darkness, poems came to him. Poems so luminous that later, when he finally escaped, lowering himself from a window in an adjoining room on a rope made of torn blankets, he had to explain them. Not because anyone doubted him, because no one could quite believe what he was describing. This is a summary of The Living Flame of Love by St. John of the Cross, a 16th century Spanish mystic who believed that the human soul was not just capable of knowing God, but of being transformed into Him completely, the way a log of wood is consumed and transformed by fire until you cannot tell where the wood ends and the flame begins. If you want a summary like this every week, subscribe. One tap is all it takes. Here is the ache this book is answering. You have moments, maybe in the middle of the night, maybe during a quiet walk, when ordinary life feels thin. Not bad exactly, just thin, like there is something just on the other side of it that you cannot reach. John of the Cross spent his life trying to say what that thing is and how to get to it. But he was not writing for everyone. He wrote The Living Flame of Love for a single woman, Doña Ana de Peñalosa, a laywoman he was guiding spiritually, and only after she asked him twice. He hesitated because, he said, the things he needed to describe were so interior, so deep inside the human spirit, that words usually fail. He wrote the whole commentary in 2 weeks, in 1586, between other duties as vicar provincial of Andalusia, because he was finally seized by enough recollection to almost relive the experience of the poem itself. The book moves through 4 stanzas of poetry, each one a layer deeper into union with God. This is not a beginner's guide to prayer. John begins where his other books, The Dark Night of the Soul, The Ascent of Mount Carmel, leave off. He begins at the top, with the soul that has already passed through purification and arrived somewhere extraordinary. The fire before the warmth. The central image of this book is fire and wood. John uses it everywhere, and it is worth understanding precisely, not poetically. When fire is first applied to damp wood, the wood does not catch. It smokes, it hisses, it turns black and sweats moisture. The fire seems to be hurting the wood. For a long time, it seems that nothing good is happening. But the fire is not punishing the wood. It is preparing it. The moisture must be driven out before the wood can ignite. Only once the wood is dry enough does it begin to glow, and then, at last, to burn. At that point, the wood and the fire are barely distinguishable. The wood has taken on the qualities of fire itself: heat, light, warmth. This is what John says the soul goes through in its relationship with God. The early stages feel like damage. You experience dryness in prayer, confusion, the sense that God has withdrawn, darkness where there used to be consolation. His name for this stage is the dark night, and his point is that the darkness is not abandonment, it is preparation. The very same fire that will one day be gentle was previously harsh because it was burning off what did not belong. He puts it plainly: the flame that is now tender was once oppressive, not because God changed, but because the soul changed. When the wood is still wet, fire feels like an attack. When the wood becomes fire, it feels like home. The practical lesson here is that the experience of spiritual dryness, of God seeming distant or absent, is not evidence that you have gone wrong. It may be evidence that you are further along than you know. The three wounds of the second stanza. The second stanza of the poem contains an image that stops you. O sweet cautery, O delightful wound. A cautery is a burning iron, the kind used in old medicine to seal a wound or destroy diseased tissue by burning it. John is saying that being wounded by God is sweet. He is not being dramatic. He means something specific. In this stanza, he describes three distinct actions of the three persons of the Trinity on the soul. The Holy Spirit functions as a cauterizing fire, the wound that heals by burning. The Father functions as a powerful, bounteous hand, overwhelming, but sustaining. The Son, the Word, functions as a delicate touch, so subtle and precise it barely registers, and yet its effect is total. John says the hand of the Father is what the soul feels when everything it once relied on is removed, and it finds itself held up by something it did not know was there. Many people, he observes, ask sincerely for spiritual depth, ask genuinely to be brought into union with God. And then, when God begins the actual work of it, they flee. They wanted the destination, but not the road. They wanted the light of the fire, but not the burning that produces it. John does not soften this. He quotes Jeremiah. If you have grown weary running with footmen, how will you contend with horses? What he is describing is a specific kind of failure of nerve that happens not at the beginning of the spiritual life, but in the middle of it. People who have made genuine progress, who have already given up a great deal, who are closer than they realize. Those are the people most likely to turn back at the moment the work becomes interior and invisible and painful because there is nothing to show for it. No comfort, no visible reward, just the burning. The only move, he says, is patience. Not passive patience. Active, alert, sustained endurance, trusting that the fire knows what it is doing. What the caverns are. The third stanza introduces one of John's most vivid concepts, the deep caverns of feeling. He means the three fundamental capacities of the human soul: the intellect, the will, and the memory. In their natural state, these caverns are bottomless. They can never be filled by anything finite. No amount of knowledge satisfies the intellect completely. No love satisfies the will completely. No experience fully satisfies the memory. Most people spend their lives trying to fill these caverns with smaller things: achievement, pleasure, love from other people, the steady accumulation of good days. None of it works. The cavern is too deep. John says the caverns only feel painful when they are partially emptied. When a person is completely submerged in worldly attachments, they do not notice the ache. They are too busy. When they begin to pull away from those attachments but have not yet arrived at union with God, that is when the hunger becomes almost unbearable. This is the stage that looks like a crisis from the outside, and it is often misdiagnosed by both the person experiencing it and the people trying to help them as depression or failure or loss of faith. John says it is none of those things. It is the soul waking up to what it was always meant to hold. Because once union begins, those same caverns become the site of something he almost cannot describe. The intellect, which previously understood only through its own natural light, now receives a higher, supernatural illumination. The will, which previously loved with its own limited affection, is moved by the Holy Spirit itself. The memory, which previously held only images of creatures and events, now holds what he calls the eternal years, something that belongs not to time, but to eternity. The caverns go from being sites of hunger to being sites of reception. deep enough to hold God precisely because they were never designed to hold anything smaller. The danger of the wrong guide. The longest section in the book, and the sharpest, is a digression that John cannot seem to stop himself from writing. He turns to address something he has clearly watched cause real harm: the problem of spiritual directors who do not know what they are looking at. He describes 3 blind guides that can destroy what God is building in a soul. The first is the spiritual director, who keeps pushing a soul toward constant mental activity and discursive reasoning, even when God is asking that soul to rest in quiet contemplation. The second is the devil, who uses that misdirected activity to break the peace. The third is the soul's own appetite for sensible consolation, its preference for feeling something in prayer over the deeper but quieter work that has no feeling attached to it. A person in genuine contemplation, John says, may appear to be doing nothing. They sit in prayer and experience nothing obvious, no thoughts, no insights, no warm feelings. A director who does not recognize this stage will tell them they are being lazy, will push them back into methods they have outgrown, will cause aridity where there was quiet, and noise where there was the beginning of real silence. John compares this to a craftsman who knows only how to hew wood. That skill is real and necessary, but it does not qualify him to paint. God leads each one along different paths so that hardly one spirit will be found like another in even half its method of procedure. The person guiding you must be able to see where you actually are, not just where they once were. The practical instruction is pointed. If the guidance you are receiving makes you feel you are always failing, always behind, always doing it wrong, consider whether the guide understands your road at all. Waking in the heart. The 4th stanza is the quietest in the book. The poem speaks of God waking in the heart, not dramatically, but gently, the way someone beloved stirs from sleep in the same room as you. There is warmth, recognition, a breathing that fills the whole interior life. John says God dwells secretly in every soul, not metaphorically, but as the ground of its existence. Without this indwelling, nothing would exist. But in most souls, this presence is hidden even from the soul itself. In the purified soul, it becomes perceptible, not in visions, not in voices, in something more like a deepening awareness that the most interior part of you is not alone and has never been alone. He ends the whole commentary at the edge of silence. He wants to say something about the breathing of the Holy Spirit, a participation, he believes, in the inner life of the Trinity itself, and finds he cannot. He writes that whatever he says will fall as far short of the reality as a painting falls short of the living face. So he stops. He lets the poem be the last word. The cell in Toledo, the opening too high to see through, the months of darkness before the escape. John of the Cross said later that in his worst period, he would climb onto his water jug to catch a strip of light from that high slit in the wall. He was not looking at freedom. He was looking at the only brightness available, and it was enough. The cavern was empty. The fire was just beginning its work. What is it that you have been trying to fill? That you have always known could not be filled by any of the things you have tried? Sit with that question tonight. John of the Cross would say, the ache itself is the proof that something real is waiting on the other side of it. If something from this summary stayed with you, drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know what landed. And a like helps more than you might think.